All right, my first question says this. Okay, I'm going to mess this up. I have a new background and way of doing this. There we go. And yes. It says, if no one can see God without dying, how do you explain the Christ appearances in the Old Testament? Now that's obviously assuming that those are Christ himself and Old Testament appearances that we're talking about. So what would you say to this person?
We don't have a name?
I do not.
Okay. Well, first off, it's not that you can't see God without dying. It's that you can't see God in his fullness without dying. Moses, when he was interceding for Israel, one of the things that he asked God to do was allow him to see him. And this is out of Exodus chapter 33, and this is where you're getting the idea behind this. Let's see. Moses said, in verse 18 of chapter 33, Moses says to God, "Please show me your glory." And then he said, "I will make all my goodness pass before you, and I will proclaim the name of the Lord before you. I will be gracious to whom I will be gracious, and I will have compassion on whom I will have compassion." But he said, "You cannot see my face, for no man shall see me and live." And the Lord said, "Here's a place by me, and you shall stand on the rock. So it shall be while my glory passes by that I will put you in the cleft of the rock, and I will cover you with my hand while I pass by. Then I will take away my hand, and you shall see my back, but my face shall not be seen." And so the idea behind that is you can't, again, see God in his fullness. And so this is where you get the term afterglow. Basically what God was doing was telling Moses was, "I'm going to hide you in the cleft of the rock, I'm going to cover you, and as I move by, you're going to see the afterglow of my presence." And so it's not, again, that you can't see God at all, it's that you can't see God in his fullness. And so obviously what God is doing is he's subduing the manifestation of his presence for Moses so that Moses can see something and still live. When you're talking about the appearances of God in the Old Testament, one of the passages that you want to be looking at is in the New Testament. And in the New Testament, it says that the Word became flesh. This is John chapter 1, verse 14. "And dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory, the glory as of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth." And then down in verse 18, it says, "No one has seen God at any time. The only begotten Son who is in the bosom of the Father, he has declared him." And so in that passage, it's letting you know that the incarnation of Christ, when Jesus came, incarnation means in the flesh. When Jesus came in the flesh, that's exactly what he did. God veiled himself in human flesh. In fact, in verse 14, it talks about that the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. The word for dwell in that passage is a word that comes from tabernacle. It's the idea of he tabernacled among us, or he tent camped among us. And it's the idea that God's glory was enclosed in human flesh. And so you can have God here appearing before people and actually be God, but his glory is covered by flesh, basically. So you'd have the same thing in the Old Testament. So when Christ appears in the Old Testament, we have appearances of God in the Old Testament where they're seeing the angel of the Lord or somebody that looks like a man. What God is doing is veiling his glory in human flesh at that point. And so that's how you answer that. So no man's going to see God in his fullness until we stand before him after we've been perfected. There's a passage in 1 John in chapter 3 where John says this, "Beloved, now we are the children of God, and it has not yet been revealed what we shall be, but we know that when he is revealed, we shall be like him, for we shall see him as he is." And the implication there is we can't see him as he is. And again, it's the idea of in his fullness at this point. There's another passage in 1 Corinthians in chapter 15 where Paul is talking about the necessity of the resurrection. And he says this, verse 50, "Now this I say, brethren, that flesh and blood cannot inherit the kingdom of God, nor does corruption inherit incorruption. Behold, I tell you a mystery. We shall not all sleep, but we shall all be changed in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trumpet. For the trumpet will sound, and the dead will be raised incorruptible, and we shall be changed. For this corruptible must put on incorruption, this mortal must put on immortality. So when this corruptible has put on incorruption, and the mortal has put on immortality, then shall be brought to pass the saying that is written, death is swallowed up in victory." And so, when you're, again, it's an indication that there's a problem with us in our flesh being able to see God in his fullness. That's why it says flesh and blood cannot inherit the kingdom of God. And so what God does is he changes us so that we can endure his presence.
So I get the fact that you have Jesus, the incarnation, he puts on the body of flesh, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the Old Testament example of the Father concealing himself with Moses as he held in the rock, cleft of the rock. So in the Old Testament, though, pre-incarnation, is Jesus doing some kind of form that conceals his glory of like something that an angel would have? Like how is he, because that's pre-incarnation.
Right.
Is he putting on something that manifests in the spiritual realm as like an angel would, that hides his glory? Because it's so weird to think about, but he's not born yet.
Right, yeah. So I have no idea
Right.
the answer to that question. But what you see is in the book of Hebrews, in chapter 13, it says that we need to make sure that we're people who are hospitable, because in so doing, some people have entertained angels without knowing it,
Right.
entertained angels unaware. And so obviously, you have a situation where angels, who are spirit beings, can come in a human form, and we wouldn't know the difference.
Right. That's what I was thinking of.
Yeah.
That verse, actually.
Right, and so we wouldn't know the difference. And you have a couple of different instances of this in the Old Testament. So for example, the two angels that go to get Lot, Lot doesn't realize who they are, and neither do the men in Sodom who are trying to rape them. They don't realize who they're dealing with until they begin showing their power, and the angels identify themselves. And so they have to look like people at that point. And so you have, obviously you have the same thing with God. God can do anything he wants.
Sure.
And so he can make himself a body and inhabit it and make it dissolve away, when he's all done with it. So again, I don't know what all the structure of that is and how that all goes together. I don't know how God did it, but obviously you have situations where God is appearing in human form in that passage. And that's a point that's being made in verse 18 of John chapter 1. No one's seen God at any time, the only begotten Son. He has declared him, or he has revealed him. And so it's always been the job of the Son to reveal God, whether you're in the Old Testament or whether you're in the New Testament. And that's not saying that nobody saw God in the Old Testament. It's saying nobody's seen God in his fullness. Right. And it's always been the job of the Son to reveal him. So when you're in the Old Testament, you'll see these passages that talk about the angel of the Lord. And the word angel in both Hebrew and Greek just means messenger. And so when we think of angels, we think of the guys that are blonde with wings or whatever. That's our concept of what an angel is. But biblically, the word angel means messenger. The disciples were called messengers. John the Baptist was called a messenger, and the word that's used for them is angelos in Greek, which is the word for angel. And so that's angel is what's called a transliteration. The translation is messenger. And so it's the messenger of the Lord that's appearing in the Old Testament. And there are times when the messenger of the Lord turns out to be the pre-incarnate Christ. It's Jesus appearing as God in human form. So, is that good?
Yes, I have a question that's kind of on the backside of that, and it says this. Can the angel of the Lord, aka pre-incarnate Christ, make an appearance like he did in the Old Testament? So you clarified that obviously he can do that, but also there's the New Testament promises that we won't see him until he comes back for us. So for the people, and then you have the situation where people say that Christ came and spoke to them and stuff like that. So is it possible, or does that violate some kind of biblical doctrine of the New Testament?
It's not only possible, it happened.
Right.
And so when you're looking at the example of Paul the Apostle, the reason that Paul got saved is because Jesus appeared to him. So this is in Acts chapter 9. It says, Saul was breathing threats, this is verse 1, and murder against the disciples of the Lord. Went to the high priest, got letters, went to Damascus. As he journeyed, verse 3, he came near Damascus, and suddenly a light shone around him from heaven. Then he fell to the ground and heard a voice saying to him, Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? And he said, who are you, Lord? And the Lord said, I am Jesus whom you're persecuting. It's hard for you to kick against the goads. And so he, trembling and astonished, said, Lord, what do you want me to do? And Jesus again says to him, arise and go into the city, and you'll be told what you must do. And so Paul, the apostle, has an appearance of Christ there. In another passage, when Paul is describing this, he lets you know that there was a blinding light, that the men who were with him heard a noise, but they could not understand the voice that was speaking. There's another passage in the book of Acts later on where Paul is on his way to Rome, and he's in a ship. And in verse 11 of Acts chapter 23, it says, but the following night the Lord stood by him and said, be of good cheer, Paul, for as you have testified for me in Jerusalem, so you must also bear witness at Rome. And so you have at least two instances where there's a physical presence of the Lord with Paul. And so, yeah, God can do anything he wants.